Okay, this is called the Leadeye Gotcha. It's a fly that I tie for people that go down to the Bahamas. It's really a heavy bonefish fly for deep flats. Anyway, I'm going to start my thread. And then I'm going to spin it back toward the back of the shank, a little bit down into the bend. And I'm going to spin it forward to about there. Grab some lead eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4 wraps that way. 1, 2, 3, 4 wraps that way. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Trying to torque that into position with the thread. I'm going to do a couple parachute wraps here and then do a couple more cross hatches. Okay, then I'm going to check and make sure my eyes are square. And they look good, so I'm going to go forward. And I'm going to take some of this braid and I'm going to tie it in right in front of the eyes here. Just a couple of turns. That bottom piece is going to be my tail. And that top piece is what's going to form my body. So I'm going to just come right behind the eyes now. And I'm going to wrap that back slightly down into the bend. And now I'm just going to put that in the material holder for a second. I'm just going to spin a body on here. Build up that pink thread. Give it a nice little underbody. I'm going to make a half hitch. Come forward. Okay, I'm just going to grab that and start to wrap it forward, being careful not to catch that. I'm going to go under, over, under, over. Just work that through those eyes. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to tie that off, trim it. I'm going to take my tail, I'm going to pull it forward, and I'm going to trim it right about even with the eye. Got my measurements, so I'm going to come in and then I'm going to rough that up. Okay, now I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to grab a little sand craft fur, cut a pretty big chunk. I hit this with a static guard before I started trying to work with it. Seems to make life a lot easier when you're working with craft fur. I'm just going to cut a big bunch of craft fur out. And I'm going to just take my scissors and knock as much of that short stuff out of there as I can. I'll back my fingers off a little bit more. Knock a little bit more out of there. Okay, now I'm just going to hold it like that, and I'm going to take the longest fibers and I'm going to pull those out. And then I'm just going to line them back up with the tips of the longest fibers again. Okay, I'm going to measure that, so when it's going back, it's going just a little bit longer than the tail. I'm going to trim that. Then I'm going to hold that down. I'm going to make a couple loose wraps. Pull that back a little bit. And then just tie it in. Okay, I'm going to make sure that everything's on top and it looks good. So I'm going to grab a little pearl crystal flash. Going to grab about 4 or 5 strands out. Going to go right to the front of the head there. I'm just going to bend that flash around. And I'm going to tie it down, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm right down the middle there. I'm going to wrap that back right to the front of the wing. And that should sit right in there. I'll just build up the head. Big part of the gotcha is having a big pink head on it, so I'm not afraid to put a lot of thread down here. I'll just grab my whip. I'll start at the back and just paint the whole head. Okay, just going to reach in there and trim that out. Then I'm going to grab that flash and I'm going to cut down on it at an angle. And that's a gotcha. Okay. Okay, now we're going to put some glue on the head of the gotcha. I'm going to use 30-minute epoxy. 30-minute epoxy is waterproof. 5-minute epoxy isn't. That's why I'm using the 30-minute. Okay, I'm going to pull the lid off the epoxy. I'm just going to carefully squeeze out a little bit of epoxy. Put the lid back on. I'm going to take my bodkin and I'm just going to mix that up. And I'm going to turn around and I'm going to mix it the other way, and I'm just going to reverse that. Make sure that it's really important that you mix the epoxy. Just take the time mixing the epoxy, and that way your flies will cure. If you don't, they won't. Okay. I'm just going to take a corner of this and I'm going to clean off my bodkin completely clean. And I'm going to grab the fly and I'm just going to take a little bit of glue and I'm just going to push it down onto the fly, onto the head. I'm going to take a little bit more. I'm going to go on the other side. I'm going to push that in. A little bit more. I'm going to push it in. Okay, now I'm going to check and make sure that I filled all the holes. Everything's uniform. You can move. You don't want to keep the fly real stationary. You want to move it around so that epoxy doesn't go and stay in one place. And then I'm just going to take that and carefully stick it in, make sure it's parallel, and I'm going to turn the dryer on and get it spinning. The reason I want to do that is I want my head to dry uniformly. And what that will do is it will just keep that epoxy from sagging in the time that it takes it to dry. And that is all you need to do. After that's spun around for a while, you can take it out and hang it on a wire and let it cure the rest of the way. And it's done. And that's it.